Hey guys, ECRG here, back with another video. We've got a very, very special guest with us today, an industry veteran. Her name is Mega, and she is coming to us with a good amount of clinical research experience in varying roles. But I'm going to let her tell you a little bit more about that. How you doing, Mega?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. Thank you so much for coming on the program today. This is the second interview I've done in clinical research. So thank you so much for trusting me with providing this content to the audience. But I'd like to go ahead and, you know, how is your experience in clinical research? A lot of people are interested in coming into the clinical research field. Can you go ahead and give a little intro about yourself?
Sure. So I was actually lucky enough to stumble into clinical research while I was still in school. I had realized that research was something that I had never really considered. And so I started off by just kind of helping out in a cognitive development lab. And from there, I kind of realized that I really liked being a part of clinical research and clinical trials. From there, I had decided to apply to a small CRO that had a position as a study manager open. And I pretty much just had mentioned the coursework that I had done, which was some pharmacology coursework and pharmaceutical chemistry coursework, which gave me an understanding of the medications that are being tested. And from there, I got hired as a study manager, and I helped with the budgets and contracts and the site selection and all of the processes that go towards starting up studies and managing them from start to finish. It was quite a role to take on as a senior in college, but I learned a lot from it because I pretty much started off at the deep end of the pool. And as the studies came on, they needed a CRA to take care of some of the studies that were happening on the West Coast. The CRO was just had one office in the East Coast, so when they had that unmet need, I kind of volunteered to take on that role so I could learn more about clinical research monitoring.
Mhm.
And that's where I really got my experience as a CRA. And then shortly after, I realized that I wanted to actually get the experience as a clinical research coordinator. And I realized that I really needed that because in order to manage studies and manage sites and make sure everything is going as planned, you really need to understand what goes on at the site level. And that's when I ended up switching my job to be a clinical research coordinator at a hospital,
Mhm.
and I worked both in non-oncology and oncology studies. So
Okay.
I was there for about a year and 5 months, and that's when I was contacted regarding a CRA position directly with the sponsor. And so now just I've been there for a month, and I'm really, really liking it. So my experience has kind of been from CRO to site to sponsor level CRA. And then on the side, more recently, I started consulting and helping with patient recruitment strategies, especially at sites where they struggle to recruit and with studies that have very strict inclusion exclusion criteria.
Okay, awesome. Wow, so a lot to unpack there. Some really good information in there. So first, you got your first job as a study manager, and you
Mm-hmm.
said you got that job right out of college, or you were working as you were a senior in college on that job.
Yep.
Um, and what year was this? Because I want to provide a framework and a context for people for like the
Sure.
years, because the industry goes up and down. So a lot of people may
Mm-hmm.
be having a hard time breaking in at certain times,
Mm-hmm.
so I want to just put that in perspective. So what year was that? And then how more specifically did that come about?
So that was May of 2015.
Okay.
So as I was finishing up my second to last year in college, I really wanted to not just intern somewhere, but have a job that I could carry throughout my senior year and kind of extend through the possibility of a full-time position later on. And I saw this one position posted on the career board. And really, I didn't think that I would be selected for it because I was not a college graduate. I didn't already have research experience. But I sent my resume in with the strong cover letter, just explaining what my potential is, and I got selected for the position. So that was one thing I learned very quickly, is that, you don't want to overreach, but if you feel like you can handle something, you definitely want to try and reach out and explain why you're qualified, even if you don't have that, 3 years of experience or 2 years of experience.
Exactly, because you never know what they could be looking for at that time, because what they post is just like the perfect ideal candidate, and a lot
Right.
of times they never come across that perfect ideal candidate.
Exactly. And the nice thing about this position was that originally it was supposed to be full time. And because I was a student, the president of the company said that's more than fine. Like, if you can commit to 20 to 25 hours a week,
Okay.
we'll take you on. So that was a nice thing. I think that the cover letter really helped. Not It's not always easy to have to write a specific cover letter for every position when you're
Right.
starting off, but
Right.
if you feel very strongly, like if the location is great to where you go to school, and the hours may be flexible, you definitely want to give a strong cover letter, because that may make you stand out compared to other people that are applying.
That's true. Um, okay, that's interesting. So that's ironic you say the cover letter thing, because I don't advise against it, but it does take time to like adapt it to a specific job. So
Right.
I typically say like save all those, but make sure you apply to the non cover letter jobs also. Like
Of
bang
course.
those out as quickly as possible, so then you
Yep.
can spend more time working on the other cover letter jobs.
Yep.
Um, so that's interesting. So you were able to work that job in college, 20 to 25 hours,
Yep.
and wow, that's amazing. Um, that's awesome. And so this was a small CRO. And then talk about how it was. How long was it before they said that you could work as a CRA, or how long did it take for that opportunity to come up?
So the opportunity came up exactly a year into my working there. So
Okay.
um, it was May 2016 where a study was going to launch, and we were prepping for it to launch for months ahead of time. But
Right.
we thought that we may find a CRA that may be on the West Coast and able to handle flying into our CRO and then going to the sites. And we weren't able to find someone that was ready to do that. And so the president asked me, do you feel comfortable doing it? And that was another one of those, oops, I'm jumping into the deep end, because I had never done CRA work before. But
Right.
it was great because I got trained by the president of the company, who has been in the industry for how many years. So that really helped. And then on top of that, I had the opportunity to do a lot of random training through readings and things like that.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the perks of working at a smaller company is you get to try a lot of different things, and opportunities come up like that where you just say yes to it, and then you're all of a sudden in a different role. So that's
Yep.
really cool.
Yeah, and that's one thing I definitely recommend. The larger CROs have the benefit of, I guess job security and things like that. But if you aren't exactly sure what position you want long term, smaller CROs allow for you to learn a lot in a little bit of time, because you're always wearing multiple hats.
Right.
Not that that's the case for larger ones either, but I think it's easier to do so in smaller companies.
For sure. So then after you were doing the CRA work, were you just doing CRA work at that time, or did you also have to wear the study manager hat?
So at that time, it became that others picked up a little bit of the workload that I had as a study manager, and because I was going to the sites quite often,
Okay.
um, I did the work while I was on flights and in between visits, so that was fine. But you definitely need to have extra backup if you're trying to do both positions at the same time.
Right. So were you just working on one study at that time?
At that time, I was working on two, and both of them were on the West Coast.
Okay. All right. So you were traveling back and forth East Coast to West Coast, long flights during that time.
Oh, yes. Yep. Very long flights. And that's one thing I can say. If you can make those productive, then the best thing. You don't have to, there's so much downtime while you're sitting on the flights that you can get a lot done
Right.
work-wise, or you can take it as you time, especially if you're flying a lot. It's worth taking that as time to catch up on whatever you want to do, or training yourself on topics that you don't know yet.
Right.
Use it as professional development time.
Right. Okay. Awesome. So I guess jumping to now as a CRA, or actually you were a study coordinator after that.
Yes.
So what made you want to jump to a study coordinator position after being a CRA?
So as I was doing the monitoring, I realized that I don't think that I could be as great of a CRA without understanding what it's like to be a coordinator, to catch all of those nuances that happen at the site, to understand why sites struggle to recruit, to understand why patient retention and patient engagement can be an issue. All of those things I think I started to realize a little more when I was monitoring. But I felt, and I'm just that type of person, in order to do my work, I really feel like I need to delve in and understand every angle of the industry. And so I really wanted that change to understand and learn. And I ended up loving it. Being a study coordinator is great. You work with patients, which is something you don't get to do. You work with subjects, which you don't get to do when you're a CRA or working on the CRO side. And you learn a lot about, principal investigators, regulatory on the site side, and how the day-to-day ins and outs of running the actual clinical trials works.
Right. Wow, that's a really good point. Yeah, a lot of times, I guess the CROs want to hire study coordinators for that reason, to become CRAs, because they are going to understand, it's like, I guess it's like, coming together like this. I guess people can't see that, but kind of like a puzzle piece.
Right.
Study coordinators are the opposite of the CRA, and they work together in that way. So, yeah, it's a lot easier to understand what the other's going through if you've been in their shoes.
Right.
Okay, so would you recommend other people to become study coordinators first to be a good CRA, or do you feel like it really helped you to do that?
So I think that in order for me to get to where I am right now, what really helped is that I had some CRO experience from the beginning. I think if you look at a lot of the positions that are looking for CRAs, you will see that they'll say you either have to have CRO experience or sponsor level experience or 5 years of coordinating experience. So unless you want to be a coordinator for 5 years and then make that switch, I highly recommend at least finding something that's part-time or something that's on the industry side of things, so that you can say, yes, I know what it's like to work directly with the sponsor, with the CRO, and then you can make that switch to a coordinator if you feel like you want that experience. I don't think it's absolutely necessary, but I do think that it was very helpful, and it makes me a better CRA because I understand what's going on at the site.
Okay, yeah, you understand the nuances, like you said, of everything.
Right.
Okay, so is your specialty in oncology, or do you monitor a lot of different things?
So my specialty right now is in medical device, where I'm working right now.
Okay.
Yes. So where I was CRO wise as a study manager, I was in endocrine studies, which were both therapeutic and device. And then at the site level, when I was a CRC or clinical research coordinator, I did oncology and non-oncology, both drug and device. And more recently, I made the switch to a sponsor level who has pretty much only device studies going on.
Okay. So which do you like better?
I have to say I really enjoy device, but I also really do miss learning about the cutting edge medications that are coming out. I think it's just a balance. If you have to kind of pick and choose. I've never really worked with a CRA that did both drug and device, so I think it's kind of dependent upon what works best for you. At this time, because I just started device, I can't say much, but I think that both you learn a lot from. You learn regulatory is very different for device than it is for drug. And so there's the added benefit of learning that side of things if you haven't really done any work in the device industry.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of jobs for hiring for medical device, and they specifically want people with, a few years of medical device experience. So
Mm-hmm.
it definitely seems like a very different thing. And yeah, definitely at the CROs that I know, they have their own unit. And the CRO that I work for too, they have their own unit dedicated to devices. So
Right.
that's cool. Um, all right, so switching gears now to, and yeah, how long were you a study coordinator for?
So I was a study coordinator for about a year and 5 months. So a
Oh,
year and a half almost. Yep. I
okay,
more recently made the switch.
okay, all right. And so you mentioned before, so you've been at the site level, you've been at the CRO level, and I guess you've recently been at the sponsor level as well.
Mm-hmm.
What level do you like the best? And can you describe a little bit to the listeners, like, I guess what the difference is between the different levels? Because a lot of people are brand new to clinical research and don't really know much, like have never had any experience. So,
Right. So I would say that the I would have to say I think I really enjoy being on the sponsor level. Um, I guess it depends on which sponsor you work for, because the sponsor I work for doesn't use a CRO to run its studies. Thus, I'm directly working under the sponsor. A lot of
okay.
CRAs work under the CRO, and then the CRO is basically what gets contracted. The CRO and the sponsor have a contract, and the CRAs represent the sponsor studies. Um, so I really enjoy being on the sponsor side because you really get to see the ins and outs of the protocol development, and you get to work with the people who directly are making these devices, the engineers. You get to work with the principal scientists. You get to work with everyone directly. Um, the CRO is basically an organization that the sponsor contracts to do a lot of the work if they don't have the in-house manpower to do monitoring or site management and all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I enjoy doing that as well, but I think that I would still pick the sponsor level. And basically, as a site, I really enjoyed doing that short term. I don't think that I would ever have stayed there long term. I think a year and a half was enough for me
Uh-huh.
to really learn everything. And I think that's true. If you, so a lot of people have asked me this who are interested into getting more experience. How long do you have to be a coordinator to really be a good coordinator? And I think that if you work really hard, you just need about a year and a half.
Yeah. I think that's probably safe for a lot of the positions in clinical research, at least like the ones you can get your foot in the door
Right.
on. I remember my manager told me for my first position, she said it was going to take a year before I would feel like really comfortable. And I was like, no way is it going to take a year. But she was right.
Yeah, it
She was
takes
right.
time.
Yeah. And okay. And then, so that's actually really cool that your sponsor actually runs the trials as well. Because being on the CRO side, you got to ask the sponsor for everything, as
Mm-hmm.
they're the final say so and everything, and you got to direct all that mail and attention to them, and then relay that to the rest of the CRO team, and then relay that again to the sites. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that's pretty cool having everything kind of in house on the sponsor side, and probably makes decisions go by faster, right?
Yes, definitely. So I remember when I was on the CRO side, there was a lot of back and forth. You would have weekly meetings with the sponsor, and the sponsor, if you asked any questions, the sponsor would have to have their own internal meeting to send you the information about their decisions. Then you would get that information, and then you would have an internal meeting with all of your team, and then make a decision about how to approach. Do you have to go back to the sponsor and say something needs to be tweaked, or are we all set to, relay the information to the sites? And then you would go to the sites and then from there, the sites may push back on a new, decision, or they may agree. But a lot of internal meetings separately instead of everyone being kind of together.
Right.
On the sponsor level, it's not like that. If there's a question or a clarification needs to be sent to these sites, it's pretty quick. It doesn't take that long because everyone is pretty much in-house. On the sponsor side, there's 3 CRAs that are helping out with the study. One that travels for the study, and then the others, they kind of do some of the extra work that needs to be done. And then everyone is very accessible. So that's one benefit of working with the sponsor as a CRA.
Okay. So you said there's only one traveling CRA?
Yep. So for every study, there is one CRA that does the traveling. So it could be, if there's 5 sites, then you handle the 5 sites for the study. And everyone takes, depending on the study, a different CRA is appointed to do the traveling. So it is beneficial because you get to really focus on particular studies instead of being spread thin, which is helpful.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. Okay. I've never heard that before. So are you the traveling CRA for these protocols yet, or?
Yep. So for right now, so I've been there for about a month now, and I'm now on 4 studies, and I will be traveling for all 4 studies.
Oh, wow. And then, okay, so you're not going to be doing any of I guess the other people are like in-house CRAs? They kind of do that?
Yeah, so they do. So my position is up to 50% travel, which is actually not bad compared to other entry-level CRA positions, which you will very easily see, 75, 80%, depending on where you work for. I really like the 50% because I get to be in-house also. I get to be in the office at least for half of the time.
Yeah.
Again, I'm the direct contact with the site. So whereas the other CRAs that are considered in-house, they pretty much do a lot of the documentation paperwork for the study, but they are not the primary contact. So my day-to-day tasks involve taking care of the sites and making sure everything is being done correctly.
Okay. So do you have to worry about submitting documents to the TMF, or you just collect them and hand them off?
So I collect them and then I file them in our eTMF.
Okay.
But the in-house they're the ones who will go ahead and print them out and then file them into because we have a paper version of it as well. So
okay.
they'll file it into that. And they kind of help remind me if there's something that they realize I need when I'm going off to the site. So if they realize there's something that needs to be collected that we had not discussed about collecting before, then they serve as that reminder as well.
Okay, cool. So do you like that setup? I mean, I know you're fairly new in it, but as opposed to the CRO, I don't know if it's a fair comparison to make because the sponsor is probably a bigger company than the CRO was. So I don't know if it's a an apples to apples comparison, but do you like that setup differently? Because I know a lot of CRAs get frustrated if there's a bunch of CRAs that kind of like back them up on a study because it can create some confusion for the site. Like, who do you reach out to, especially if a CRA is on the road a lot? Then they might not be contacted often.
Yep. So I am the only CRA contact for the sites. They do not. I don't think the sites even have the contact information for the in-house CRAs.
Okay.
So really, any site issues have to be relayed to me. The other contact is the project manager. So if for whatever reason I'm on vacation, they don't go to another CRA. They'll go to the project manager and ask a question. Yep.
Okay.
So that way, with 3 CRAs or 4, whatever amount of CRAs like backing each other up, you're right, it can cause a lot of confusion. And quite frankly, I think that sites get very frustrated when there's, a list of CRAs that they can potentially reach out to when they have an issue and they don't know who the best one to reach out to is. So the sponsor I work for tries to make it very transparent, that, you know, there's one lead CRA and they're the ones that's supposed to help you with any issues that you have.
Okay. All right. Very good. So switching gears a little bit, you talked about study manager to study coordinator, to CRA to study coordinator. A lot of people are searching for jobs and they're based all over the country. You don't have to give too much detail here, but could you say like what part of the country you're based in? You could just say like Northeast, like whatever, like DMV.
So I'm based in the Northeast, more specifically in like the greater New York area.
Okay.
So that's where I am. And I can say that if you are in the Northeast, it's very difficult to find clinical research positions. But if you are looking to start off and you are flexible in terms of location, I highly recommend looking within the Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Massachusetts area. Those three areas are the easiest places. So if you live in Rhode Island or Connecticut or any of those places, you really want to try and be flexible in terms of location. That's where you'll find the work.
For sure. All right. Thanks for mentioning that, because a lot of people, you can do as much resume magic as you want, because a lot of people reach out to me and to us for, looking at their resume, but really a lot of it is based on location as well. Even for myself, my first gig, I was moving from Missouri to where I am now. And a lot of people just rejected me based on my location at first, because I wasn't putting that I was based in the area. So they're saying, oh, we're gonna have to probably pay them to move or something like that.
Right. Yeah. So one trick that I've noticed that worked for a friend of mine is to not put your address on your resume, and instead put willing to relocate. And you can, if you are not expecting to be compensated for your relocation, she actually put that on her resume, willing to relocate without requiring compensation. And that really helped her, because I think the big issue was that she came from a state where clinical research wasn't really booming, and she was trying to find work. And I mean, she noticed such a huge difference within a short period of time. Even with Indeed, she would submit the resumes, just that one click apply, and that helped. And then on LinkedIn, she actually put that in her headline, seeking opportunities, willing to relocate without being compensated. And that helped her get so many messages through LinkedIn about positions and job descriptions, and that really changed her career.
What a gem. I didn't even think about putting that in the resume, but that's genius right there. So I appreciate that. That's a super gem. But yeah, it makes sense, because they don't want to pay for people to relocate for entry-level positions usually, because usually you're not going to get a huge return for the company for entry-level positions. So yeah, so that's great right there. But yeah, definitely the Northeast is great for clinical research typically, and I know in the Boston area you've got a lot of sponsors up there. CROs as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that anywhere, even California, from what I hear, is very good in terms of clinical research opportunities. They also have a lot of startups in that area. So if you don't want to work for a company that's big or well established, and you're looking for something to really start up and then also contribute to the development phases of a company, then Cali, for example, is a great idea. Or New York City has a lot of startups now too, and that's where you can get in. I don't know if and that may require you to be able to be willing to wear multiple hats, and that's something that you have to decide while you're applying to positions.
Right. Those multiple hats, I mean, especially if you want to be a CRA, kind of like how you did, they offered it after you had some experience. That's a really good way to, kind of get into the role, is, get your foot in the door as something else, and then you can kind of meander your way over there.
Yep.
Just through working hard and networking within the company and stuff like that.
Yep.
Okay. Awesome. So now transitioning to this other, I guess it's a side hustle that you have of consulting. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So there are a lot of companies now that have started up to provide services to sites and sponsors who are having trouble recruiting for their studies. And these companies basically run ads or platforms that help attract qualified potential subjects. But then there's that unmet need of who's going to screen these patients and help the site really bridge that gap between the referrals that come in through social media or advertising and actually coming in and showing up for the first visit, the screening visit. So my job as a part of the consulting that I do is to actually contact these patients and kind of see if they're a good potential subject for a particular study. So I do the pre-screening aspect of it, and then if they do pass through my pre-screening, I pass them on to the site. In addition, if the sites have any suggestions, if they have any concerns about recruitment and how it's slow or how it's, we're sending them too many referrals and they can't handle that. It's my job to gauge how often we should run those ads and how often I should be sending those pre-screenings to the site, so that, if I talk to a potential subject and the site can't get them in the next 2 weeks, you're going to lose that subject most likely, because they're not going to take the whole process seriously. They, if you're serious about it, they'll be serious about it. So strategies like that, timing everything and then doing the screening, that's what I do on the side. I put in about 10 to 15 hours of that a week. Whether I increase that later on is really up to me, but that's a nice thing about doing consulting, that you can kind of make your own hours and determine how much work you take on.
Right.
And it's a great side hustle. That's the thing. Like, not every industry has that option, so with all of these startups that are coming up, if you can find a way to help out or contribute, and it's a part-time position, a lot of it you can do remotely, so you're not even going into another office after work, you're doing it from home.
Right. So how did you think about this? How did you get involved with that?
So while I was a coordinator, a lot of the studies that I worked on suddenly were taking on the sponsors of those studies were taking on these companies and giving them the task of helping recruit. So I worked with quite a few, and I didn't even know that, pre-screening was a thing that these companies offered. But over time, as I learned more about the studies and how the companies were helping, I actually realized that there were screeners that were doing this pre-screening before we were even getting the referrals. And so I just typed it into Indeed, I typed it into LinkedIn, and you actually will easily find positions here and there like that. I know that a lot of companies have even said, if you reach out to us, the biggest thing is that I think not every company posts all of its openings. So if you think that there's a position, and it's somewhere out there online, that a bunch of the positions are never posted anywhere online. They
Right.
have this need, and an internal referral ends up taking that position, or, they kind of fill it by searching on LinkedIn. So it never hurts to reach out to companies and say, hey, I'm interested, do you have something? And if not, they'll hold on to your resume till something comes up.
Right.
And that's basically what I ended up doing for this one gig that I have right now.
Okay.
Just reaching out and saying that, I have coordinator experience or I have study experience, and I'm really interested in doing this and helping out. And 2 months later, I was all set up, and I've been working on a bunch of studies and with a bunch of sites since then.
Okay. So do you reach out to the sites yourself and offer your services, or is it through another company that you do this?
So it's through another company. So I am contracted through another company, but I work as an independent contractor.
Got it.
The owner of that patient recruitment company reaches out to the site. So this is how it kind of works. The sponsor will reach out to the patient recruitment company and say, hey, we need help recruiting.
Right.
And then they will say, this is the entire list of the sites that we have open for this particular study. Feel free to reach out and ask them if they would like these services. And a lot of them, and most of them, do say yes. And in that case, I get the list of all of the people who said yes.
Okay.
And I reach out. The nice thing is that because I work on the East Coast, I'm assigned a lot of sites that are on the West Coast.
Perfect.
So there's that 3-hour gap. So even when I get home from work at 6 o'clock, technically it's only 3 o'clock, and that's perfect. I can do a decent 3 hours if I want to of work. On the weekends, it's really convenient too. If you don't have any plans, you can make some money while sitting at home.
There it is, man. That's a great side hustle. So do you need some experience to do this, or do you think anyone can do this, in a way to get experience in the industry?
I think that any company would want to see that you have some type of healthcare knowledge, or if you have been a medical scribe before or a research assistant before and helped screen, anything where you can show that you know how to ask the right questions if you're given the inclusion exclusion criteria. Okay. So if you worked as a research assistant with human subjects in college, then this would be something that you can look into. If you were a medical scribe, you can look into it. If you're an EMT and you want to get into clinical research, I think that would be very easy because you have that healthcare knowledge. And then anyone that's already in the industry, as long as you have an understanding of how to speak with potential subjects, if you have good bedside manner, you would be a good potential for the position.
Okay, perfect. All right, cool. So do you know how much longer you'll continue to be doing this? You think you'll be doing it for the remainder of your career, or do you think there will be a time where you're not doing this?
So I would like to do it for as long as possible. At times I really enjoy doing it, and I think, what if I want to do this full time? Like if I can find people. The only thing is because this is work from home, you have to not want to go into an office. And although I love doing work from home, I really do like going into an office at least a few times a week, kind of seeing people, and that's where you network too. You meet a lot of people.
Right.
On the sponsor side right now, I meet a lot of new people. I connect with them. I learn a lot from them. Working from home, you're kind of isolated into your own corner. But I don't know, maybe like 5 years from now, once I've gotten a lot more experience and I want to have something that's low key, flexible hours, I think that it's a great thing to be able to do. So hopefully I'm able to do it for the long haul, because I think it's a great fit. I mean, flexible hours, being able to do weekends, that's great.
Okay. Oh yeah, you can make phone calls on weekends too?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Cool. So yeah, I had a question about something about the sponsor, but I forgot it. So we'll get back to it in a second. Another question I wanted to ask was, are you happy about your career progression right now? And I wanted to ask that just to provide a little context to that question is, there's a lot of demand for industry professionals who have experience right now. It's almost like, you could pretty much get a job very quickly if you have some experience in clinical research. So do you feel like you're happy with the way your career's progressed so far?
Yes, I'm 100% happy with it. I think that I was very lucky because I have been able to get so much different experience in a short period of time, which not everyone is lucky enough to get. It's not that I haven't worked hard for it, but I think that I'm very fortunate, because there are people who are looking out there to start a career and they have difficulty doing so. As a CRA right now, I definitely want to continue being a CRA for a while, really solidify my knowledge in terms of what monitoring is, and then I'll see where life takes me in terms of career.
Okay. All right. I remember my question now. All right. You said the keyword work from home as a CRA. Now, a lot of people that I know, that I'm friends with, that are CRAs, tell me that they love, being 100% remote. They only go on site, and then pretty much the other time they're like in their home office or traveling or something like that. They love not going into the office because of the amount of freedom that it provides. No one's really looking over their shoulder. They don't really have anywhere to be. If they don't have any visits that week, they can wake up when they want to, just make sure they're doing their stuff. But you go into the office. So how is that for you?
Um, so I can work remotely when I want to, but I choose to at least go in as often as possible. So, on Fridays, sometimes I'll work from home. Tomorrow, I don't have too much that requires me to be in the office, so I'll work from home. But most of the time, I like going into the office because I get that connection with my team. I get to see people that work as clinical project managers. I get to see the principal scientists. I get to work with R&D, and all of that for me, as a young professional, I think it's a great opportunity to learn from everyone. Later on in my career, I may decide that working from home is what I want to do full time, and I don't want to have to go into an office. But I think that when you're learning and you still have so much to gain from those who are more experienced than you want to be able to be in office and connect with those people, learn from those people.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. I've talked a lot about on this channel the networking in the office and how powerful that can be. Just like networking in the coffee room or in the cafeteria, and
Yeah.
like how many people you can meet and how many opportunities that can open up. Just saying hello to somebody that you see in there. So
Yeah.
that's a good point about how much you can learn and how much you can gain from being in the office, even though you may not
Right.
necessarily have to be.
Yep.
Okay. So, so you've been in clinical research. You've had a few positions. What would you say are the best positions for people to get into the field?
I think the easiest ones from what I've seen, like job description wise, because once I started, I never really looked back at the entry level positions. I wanted to continue growing, but I've helped quite a few friends look for positions, and it seems like the clinical trial associate positions on the sponsor level or the CRO level are a great place to start. I've seen a lot of those CTA roles turn into CRA roles if people are transparent about it during the interview process.
Right.
I'm applying for the CTA position because I want to be a CRA. Clinical research coordinator positions are also something that you should definitely look at, because a lot of places will just take you as long as you have some type of healthcare experience or some experience with patients or subjects, depending on where you've worked or interned. In addition, I think that if you have a lot of trouble, like if, for example, you're looking for work while you're still in school, I think that you should look for research assistant positions in psychology labs. Maybe the medical school is looking for a research assistant if you have a medical school in your school. And that would really help because you're also working on studies, whether it's different than pharma and device studies, that's fine, but you're still getting the experience of what it's like to be a part of clinical research, essentially.
Right. Okay. Good point. Now you mentioned clinical trial associate. Now a lot of companies call that different things, but it's probably like the same thing, like as clinical trial assistant.
Mm-hmm.
So for anyone that's listening, you got to keep that in mind that a lot of these positions are really the same thing, but they call them different things depending if at the company and if you're at the CRO or the sponsor.
Right.
But yeah, definitely agree. Study coordinator, the CTA role. You mentioned the medical assistant and things like that. All good roles to get your foot in the door. The key thing there is just to get your foot in the door, and then everything else should take care of itself once you get some experience.
Yeah, you have to take what you can get. I think that you don't want to be too picky in the beginning of the career. Obviously, you don't want to pick something that you're going to hate, but you want to keep yourself open to as much as possible, because you never know. I've seen CTA positions or clinical trial assistant positions turn into CRA positions within 6 months. I've seen some of them take 2 years. So, I mean, you really don't know where a position is going to take you unless you give it a try. And if you really are not feeling like career progression is an opportunity at the company where you start off, you can always move. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you shut yourself out from initial opportunities, eventually what will happen is that you're kind of pigeonholing yourself accidentally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you never really know where it's going to take you. And I remember, I think a lot of my friends that are CRAs now got into the industry like 2014, 2015. And I remember the companies were just kicking them out the door to become CRAs. Like they were just like begging them to like become CRAs immediately.
Right.
So, it doesn't take much experience if the market's right. And I know last year, I think 2017 was a pretty slow year to the industry.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
Yeah. So I have a lot of friends whose younger siblings, I guess, now are graduating from college, and a lot of them wanted to get into clinical research. So I got a lot of resumes from people saying, can you look at this for me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm having trouble. And sometimes I was just like, let me just see what's out there. And it seemed like really what was out there was mid-level positions, not really entry-level positions.
Right.
And even the entry-level position said like you need 3 years of experience.
Right.
And we all know that we all roll our eyes when we see something like that.
Right.
But that was the state of, the job market at that time.
Right.
And hopefully 2018 is better.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big reason for that was because of all the mergers. You had LabCorp by Covance and Chiltern.
Yes.
You had Parexel getting bought by Pamplona Capital, and you had the big merger between INC Research and Inventive Health becoming Syneos. So that really stagnated the market, and all those happened like throughout the year. So I think hopefully, I'm crossing my fingers, we don't have anything like that this year. So hopefully a lot more positions will open up, and I've seen it already. Yeah, one of the indicators I look for is like if there's contract project management positions. Mm-hmm. When I see people posting that, I know the industry is in a good place because I didn't see any of that. I didn't see any of that last year.
And that's a good point. Adding on to what you should take if you're looking to start off your career, don't be afraid to take contract positions. I think that that's so important. My CRC position was contracted to hire, mm-hmm. and I mean, I'm so thankful that I just went for it. If you work hard, I don't think I've seen anyone not get a full-time opportunity if it was temp to hire.
Right.
If it's just temp, then you have to be comfortable with finding something before the end of your contract. But even then, sometimes those temp positions just get extended and extended and extended. And if you're looking to start off your career, honestly, it may not be a bad idea to do it 6 months, and then you have that 6-month experience to look for a full-time with benefit job.
Right.
2-month contracts, 3-month contracts, I think are a little bit risky if you're a fresh graduate, but 6 months I think is fine. You'll find something as you get that first 3 months of experience.
Right. I got my start in the industry on a 3-month contract, so if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess in theory it was a big risk, but I can say that the market completely opened up as soon as I had that experience on my resume. Like it was a completely different ball game. Way more callbacks from companies and way more interviews, like significantly more. So
right. And the thing is, like, a lot of companies now, they have those filters for resumes. So if they don't see like research or clinical trial on the resume, the automated systems that they have to filter out resumes may kick you out even before it gets to the desk that's going to look at your resume. So having anything is better than having nothing.
Right. All right, cool. So, just wrapping up here, we've been here almost an hour, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. But here's a question that I like, and I stole this question from one of the people that I follow, Gary V. He always asks, like, what are you obsessed with? And I really love that question. So I'm going to ask that to you. What are you obsessed with right now? And it can be anything from like, you just found like some new recipe you like to make, or, you just fell in love with like running or something like that. So do you have anything that you're obsessed with right now?
I don't know. That's actually one of those questions where I can't answer right now because I feel like I've been so busy just working that I haven't had much time on the side. The first thing that came into my mind when you said that is I feel like the majority of my time has been going towards patient recruitment strategies. I've been devoting a lot of time into understanding what's out there and then what is still unmet in terms of that. So, I mean, it's kind of in alignment with what I do, but and not really a hobby, but I mean, I think that that's what I've been devoting a lot of my extra time to, kind of just understanding how it can be improved on the CRO, sponsor, and site level.
Okay. All right. Awesome. So obsessed with patient recruitment. That's not a bad place to be. Um, all right. So any lasting impressions or any lasting words of wisdom you'd want to give to anybody listening to us right now?
um, I think that the clinical research industry is tough to get into, but you should never get disheartened by not getting callbacks or not getting offers. If it's really hard to get something right away, but if you are diligent at it and you really do put the time in, people will see that. And I think the other thing is, if you're having trouble, use LinkedIn to connect with people who have the experience that you're looking for. I know that's kind of a bold move, but if you really genuinely show that you're wanting to learn about their experiences and understand how they got to where they are, it's never a bad thing. I've seen many people, not just in clinical research, but other than that too, reach out to people that they think are a great example of what they want to be 10 years from now or 5 years from now. And people are so nice. They will, really help you understand what you can do to improve your chances.
Okay. All right. Perfect. So, I'm going to ask this. You don't have to. You can say no. But are you comfortable providing maybe an email address if anybody has any questions, or I can give them my email address, eliteclinicalgroup@gmail.com, and just forward them to you. It's up to you.
Yeah, sure. So do you want me to just say it right
Yeah, just
now?
say it and I'll put it in the
Okay.
description too.
So it's going to be mshah
Okay.
dot crp
Okay.
at gmail.com.
Okay. So I'll have that in the description as well if you want to ask Mega any questions. Also, if you ask any questions in the comments, I'll forward them to you as well, so you can
Okay,
put your take on it
perfect.
as well.
Sure.
All right. Thanks so much for coming on the show today, Mega. It was awesome having you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed talking with you.